The next step on the agenda is a panel discussion. And Norway is recognized and well established as a leading exporter of energy technology and competence. Excellent material and engineering skills combined with Norwegian creativity from exploiting the energy resources of Norway is a strong base for the export activities in the solar industry. In the panel discussion, we will get to know more about 4 different companies, either 100% dedicated to the solar business or delivering to this segment as part of their portfolio. I have the pleasure of introducing Jon Dugstad at the NORWEP, who will guide us through their presentation and discussions. So please, Jon, take us through it.
Welcome to this session on Norwegian expertise deployed globally. In this session, we will discuss the unique features of the Norwegian industry. We will touch on the challenges that the Norwegian industry in the solar field is experiencing, and we will also discuss to which extent the industry might be able to join up in terms of their export or international expansion possibilities. Now, the Norwegian solar industry, as you all know, is very diverse, and the companies which we will meet in this session are from very different angles of the industry. We will meet NorSun, the wafer producer. We will meet Norsk Solar, the developer of solar parks internationally. We will meet Prediktor, the supplier to the industry, and we will also meet FREYR, the new battery manufacturer, which is now putting up manufacturing in Norway. So I believe it will be a very interesting discussion, as we have people from various parts of the industry to discuss a common theme, and we are looking for common features in this industry as well. Now, the Norwegian solar industry internationally was growing by 20% last year. A lot of that in developing solar parks globally, but also some expansion in the areas of solar wafer and the manufacturing and export of solar wafers from Norway. In fact, as much as 60 billion Norwegian kroners in turnover and 10,000 employees are expected to be created by the development of export and international trade by the Norwegian solar industry by 2030, according to the roadmap that the solar cluster presented to you yesterday. And by the way, my name is Jon Dugstad. I'm heading up what we call wind and solar at Norwegian Energy Partners. And if you do not know Norwegian Energy Partners, our purpose is it to bring you guys, i.e. the Norwegian industry, in front of the clients in international markets. So come and talk to us if you'd like. With that, I would like to introduce the first speaker to you. That is Mr. Carsten Rohr. He is Vice President Business Development at NorSun. Carsten, the screen is yours. Go ahead.
You said my name is Carsten Rohr. I'm Vice President Business Development at NorSun. We are a monocrystalline silicon ingot and wafer producer, and our mission is to be the leading manufacturer of this material for premium solar cells through innovative technology, sustainable production, and operational excellence. Just as a quick overview, what we are doing, we have a production capacity of about 450 megawatts in Vesterdal and quartered in Oslo. We are currently expanding to about 1 gigawatt, and here on the picture you can see the location of our factory, which is between the end of Sognefjord and a freshwater lake. And this also indicates some of the competitive advantage we have with our location, meaning that we have access to cheap and green electricity, hydropower, just coming from the mountains around there. Europe's largest glacier just around the corner, and also cooling water, which is quite important from the fresh lake, which means that we reduce electricity consumption because we don't need chillers cooling. So that means we have a uniquely low CO2 footprint, which is very important. Now I'll get back to that in a moment. We've been supplier to tier 1 solar cell manufacturers with the highest efficiencies in the world, and currently operate with about 230 employees. Strong owners, Nysnø Climate Invest joined as one of the largest owners last year. ABN AMRO, the Dutch bank, through the Energy Transition Fund, and Scatec, the founding company through Alf Bjørseth, and Arendal's Fosse Company, some of the biggest shareholders in our company. As I mentioned, the low carbon footprint is one of our key competitive advantages, and here illustrated is the CO2 footprint of wafers, and a typical wafer from China compared to other countries, where NorSun is shown on the right with significantly less carbon footprint. This is based on the French tender evaluation system. The French carbon footprint and value the carbon footprint in that tender system with 20–30% score. And there's other countries that are introducing it now, Korea, for example, on a similar scheme. There are other initiatives where carbon footprint becomes important. For example, the European Commission is looking at environmental policies like eco-design and others, where this plays an important role potentially. And other countries are looking for sustainable solutions and policies to support that. We, together with other players in Norway, have with EPD Norge introduced a new environmental product declaration product category rules for PV as part of construction, and as PV as a construction element, and that's important basis for using PV and getting credit for environmental footprint. So there's a lot of interest for that from project developers to have the lowest possible carbon footprint, Energy Plus projects, green public procurement. For example, Statsbygg is very much interested, PPAs, and individual households. So there's a lot of interest. What we've been doing, we are in the middle of expanding. Strong interest for our products from 450 megawatts to 1 gigawatt. We got financing last year, and we are currently in the process of putting new equipment in, large pullers, very productive pullers, new top of the end wire source, and shaping equipment and automation. That is not the end of our plans. So we are planning to continue expansion, going from 1 gigawatt to 4 to 5 gigawatts at the current site in order with a full expansion. And that would also, of course, reduce the cost significantly with scale. So what we've been doing, starting the process for that. Of course, 4 to 5 gigawatts, we need to grow with the market, with our customers, and we have secured land at the current site. We are starting the process. Next year would then be finance activities, and finalization of that could potentially be in 2023. Clearly, I've talked about the CO2 footprint, high ingot productivity and quality. Safety is also really important compared to China. Efficient processing, recycling and reuse of all waste materials and silicon. High degree of automation, crucial in Norway with a high labor cost. So just finally, some of the key competitive advantages that we see in Norway, and why we think this is a very good location to expand manufacturing, is the cheap and green electricity, the cooling water availability that I mentioned, but also a very good R&D environment and support. Public funding is available for that, high quality research institutes, and high level of expertise and innovation in relevant fields like metallurgy and also solar PV. So that is just a short introduction of NorSun, and of course I'm looking forward to interesting discussions.
Excellent. Thank you, Carsten. That was very interesting. I think we'll just move on to our next next company, because I think we are running a bit short of time already. I like to speak a lot, so that's probably the reason behind that. But our next speaker is Mr. Øyvind Vesterdal, who is the CEO of Norsk Solar. Welcome, Øyvind, and please, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much for that. So my name is Øyvind Vesterdal. I am the CEO of Norsk Solar. Norsk Solar, we are an IPP, or an independent power producer. We are based out of Norway. It's a privately held company, and we develop, build, own, and operate solar power plants in emerging markets. Within our group, we have featured clients such as Google and Facebook, who did the largest renewable energy purchases in Europe and worldwide, respectively. And last year, we built some 50 megawatts of solar power plants in Pakistan, 9 megawatts in Ukraine. And at the moment, we are engaged in projects in Latin America, all across Africa, and Southeast Asia and Central Asia as well. And being an IPP, what we do is essentially that we would develop and we would do the engineering, project management, etc. We would make very well use of products coming out of the NorSun wafers, for instance, in projects. And we would put together the financing where we would provide the equity, but we would also provide debt financing from relevant institutions worldwide into our projects. What we see in our projects is that coming from Norway, while we don't have too much sun here, it's actually a benefit coming from Scandinavia, because there is a lot of soft power coming from Norway. So at the same way, most people have heard about German engineering, coming from Norway immediately provides with a level of trust that, together with the competency and obviously being able to provide the quality of the power plants, makes us well seen in the markets we're in. We see, for instance, very well support as well on the financing side. Nefco, which is owned by the Nordic states. It's a financing institution that joined us for the project in Ukraine. And we also see similar kind of, let's say, framework or support from other government bodies. As was mentioned on the previous speaker as well, the Research Council of Norway, Innovation Norway, they are very helpful when it comes to development on new technologies, which is very important for us. The solar market is changing at an incredible pace, so it's important to be up to date on the newest technologies, while still being able to build bankable cases. NORAD is a fantastic tool for Norwegian companies. in that they would help to mitigate some of the risk in more challenging markets, which coincidentally are also some of the markets where we have a lot of sun and where we also see good opportunities in Norsk solar. And the same thing with NORWEP, which also is a Nordic similar institution. So all in all, we see that coming from Norway is actually quite a bit of a benefit from our point of view, even though there is a bit of travel. And in the COVID situation, that has obviously been a challenge, but we do see that building networks and building projects is still not an issue at all, and we actually see this as a benefit coming from Norway.
Thank you so much, Øyvind. That's highly interesting as well, and I know that the roadmap, which was launched yesterday, alludes to the need of capital and need of risk mitigation for Norwegian companies. But according to what you are saying, it sounds like that is okay. If you can include NORAD, if you can include other financial institutions, not potentially all from Norway, but equity from Norway, as we hear that NorSun is also engaging. How do you feel that the Norwegian financial institutions are engaged in this area, or doesn't it matter?
Well, obviously it would be a benefit, and I would say some of the European and perhaps other international financial institutions as well would probably be more well known internationally than the Norwegian institution would be. I see many speak about Export Credit Norway and GIEK, which are excellent tools for many purposes. For some of the more solar-related markets, you would instantly see that there is a guarantee premium of using those mechanisms, and essentially you then would end up in a situation where it's actually more well, you wouldn't be better off using the Norwegian tools than just using either the local institutions or more international institutions. So if there was a way to reduce that premium, for instance, that would be instantly a way of let's say, making those tools much more attractive.
Interesting. Now, I think we'll move on. Our next speaker is from Prediktor. And Predictor is supplying this industry, mainly large-scale solar outside of Norway, as far as I know. But maybe I will know more after you have presented Espen. Espen Krogh is the CEO of Prediktor. Please, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Jon. Yes, Prediktor has been a supplier to Norwegian-based industries for quite a few years, 25 years actually today, or this year. And we've been supplying to manufacturing process, oil and gas, and also energy industries. But in this context today, we focus on dramatic changes happening in several of the client segments we're in, and this is related to the energy transition that is on everybody's mouth this year. And I believe actually 2020 was potentially the kickoff of this energy transition, and this year gave it significant momentum. We see announcements like this: solar is now the cheapest electricity across the globe, more or less. And we have all the analytics coming out on this and saying what needs to happen. And it's dramatic new establishments of energy assets that needs to happen. So we're talking about an increase of electricity produced across the globe that is 6 to 8 times bigger than today within the next 30 years. The markets confirm that they expect this transition to happen. We see the global clean energy index more than doubled, and the oil and gas index is less than half than it was only 18 to 24 months ago. And also within our client segments, we see that oil and gas, they move significantly to renewables with the strategies. We have dramatic announcements like this one from Royal Dutch Shell, slashing 40% the cost of producing oil and gas in order to be able to invest in renewable energy. And within our clients in renewables, there also changes. A lot of existing operators with renewables, they are now diversifying. We see that with Statkraft, boosting the solar capacity with acquisitions. We also see that with Scatec Solar doing the opposite, going from solar also into wind and hydro assets with acquisitions. And we learned that there's a reason for doing such types of acquisition. They see the benefit of having a diversified asset portfolio within the energy production assets. So energy asset operators, they are now diversifying, and in order to be able to produce a lot of new good energy to the rapid increase in such types of energies across the markets. But in order to do this properly, they have a lot of challenges. They need to maximize the energy production of each asset across the diversified portfolio. They also need to go into lean and mean operations. A lot of these assets have much lower margins than traditional energy assets. And so operations need to be as at low cost as possible. And also with a diversified asset portfolio, they need to figure out how to optimize the output to the grid, depending on market conditions and weather conditions, etc. So for all of these challenges, we are supplying a software solution architecture that can assist them in addressing those challenges. So we have a 25-year-old technology that has matured through the years in order to provide a stable and reliable connection to the assets. And then we bring all those data to the new layer that kind of like standardizes all the data we collect from the asset, because these are significant numbers of data. There are many 10,000s of real-time data signals streaming out of every asset. And they are often set up with different suppliers and vendors to start with. So it can be quite messy on the information side. So we clean that up and reorganize and map that. And then we provide the data to the application that will assist the operators in optimizing the asset portfolio. So an example of a setup we have is with Scatec Solar. So I guess Scatec Solar is quite known in this context, in integrated independent solar power producer. They have about 2 gigawatt in operations now and targeting quite a rapid and big expansion. So in all their assets, we have the setup with connectivity to the equipment. We reorganize all the data to a standardized information model, and then we put all the applications that will assist the operating team that you see here in the background, looking into the assets and assuring they produce as optimal as possible.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very good of you. I think that we are highly interested to talk about one of your features afterwards, which is, of course, digitalization. And I think that might be one of the competitive edges that we might have from a Norwegian viewpoint in the industry as it goes along. So, Espen, thank you so much for that. But I think we'll move along to someone else who's quite new to this industry, and maybe not only solar, but as you have alluded to, Espen, the energy industry is in a transition, and we will need many more facets of the industry also built in Norway. And of course, batteries is part of the equation. That's a bit weird talking about batteries coming from Norway, as we have the best hydropower sources in the world, and of course they function as batteries. But tell me, Tom Einar Jensen, who's the CEO of FREYR, tell me, Tom, how do you utilize the Norwegian hydropower in your battery plans? Please, the screen is yours.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us into this important event. And I'd like to talk about batteries and what I label a sunrise industry in Norway, and how it relates to the sun, and solar deployments and competence built up in solar industries in Norway in general. But let me start with this, because this all sort of starts here. And the main reason why this is very interesting in the current context is that this was actually the first slide of Tesla's battery day. So when they start talking about the need for batteries and why batteries play an important role in the decarbonization of society, they start with climate. And it's quite outstanding to see how much we are concentrating CO2 in the atmosphere and the sort of challenges that are coming with that. And I'd like to sort of just bring a couple of sort of high-level statistics to bear in the sort of era we're now going into, and why, let's say, Norwegian engineering ingenuity and Norwegian project development capability can actually play a much larger role in this than what we currently potentially perceive. So every day, as most people in the solar industry knows, the Earth is hit with energy which is 6,200 times larger than the energy we actually consume. And every day we produce energy, and 85% of that energy is non-renewable. And that is the reason why you have this spike on this chart. So if the planet is going to decarbonize, we need to change the way we produce energy. We need to change the way we use energy, and we need to change the way we combine different renewable energy sources. Solar and PV is an obvious kind of contribution to that, and the growth in that industry is second to none. But more importantly, the cost of installing new PV installations in almost all regions are now cost competitive with all other alternatives. And it can replace fossil-based solutions, combining it with storage solutions and battery solutions in almost all regions on the planet today, cost competitively without subsidies relative to the alternative. In this context, we believe batteries are very, very important. And I would just like to talk a little bit about this interesting opportunity that batteries represent before I attach comments to how it relates to solar PV and solar deployments. We have done a fairly detailed assessment based on our own technological choices, where we're going to produce the batteries, how we're going to leverage the Norwegian capabilities and comparative advantages that have been talked about by my co-speakers today. All of these elements are relevant for battery cell production. Battery cell production is a reasonably energy intensive industry, it requires large amounts of energy, it requires clever engineers who are able to have high uptime in production, and so on and so forth. So in essence, producing batteries in Norway using hydropower to then put it into storage systems to store solar power is actually not a bad idea. And what we see when we put our lens on technological development and cost development in this industry, we see that energy system storage solutions, where a large part of it relates to solar developments, is actually growing a lot faster than most people think. In our estimates, by 2030, we will need 670 gigawatt hours worth of solar and wind and other renewable balancing systems to basically ensure that we can roll out and unlock more renewable power generation. Let me put this demand projection into context and sort of show how we believe the demand after batteries or for batteries are going to develop in the coming decade. We believe that demand is going to go a lot faster than most people think. And I also like to reference, since this is a solar panel, that the International Energy Agency, which I guess many in the solar industry are very familiar with, their consistent underestimation of the rollout of solar is the same thing that they're now doing in batteries. Same thing they've done in wind, same thing they're doing in most sort of industries they are predicting that are alternatives to oil and gas solutions. So we believe that the rollout of batteries and rollout of storage solutions in combination with renewable energy generation is going to be a much faster, much more rapid, much more fundamental industry globally. And we do believe Norway and Norwegian companies in various partnerships can sort of take a very large part of that opportunity. Then I'd like to turn it back to Tesla again. And on the right-hand side of this chart, you see what Tesla announced on their battery day, which is the required installed annual capacity of new battery solutions. 20 terawatt hours of new batteries is needed annually to decarbonize the transportation sector and to decarbonize the power generation sector. 10 terawatt hours of that is required to decarbonize power generation. So that means, of course, a lot of solar energy will be stored in batteries in the coming decades. So the opportunity to combine solar with batteries is highly underestimated and will be a much more important part of the equation forward than most people realize. It's in that backdrop that FREYR is very happy to be part of the equation. Now, as also pointed out by one of the former speakers, producing energy intensive and or relevant products into this space in Norway has a dramatically lower footprint on the CO2 equation compared to anyone else. If we want to decarbonize society, we need to produce the products that will decarbonize society in an environmentally friendly way. It goes without saying, and in batteries, it's sort of obvious. Because if you replace a combustion engine with an electric vehicle, but you charge those batteries with non-renewable power, and you use non-renewable power to produce the batteries, the gain of not emitting CO2 at the tailpipe is kind of eaten up by using CO2 when you're producing the products. So we're very happy to see that we can actually produce these things in Norway with world-leading CO2 footprint. FREYR is building our first facilities in Mo i Rana, an energy, let's say, experienced community, where they have for over 100 years leveraged hydropower to produce energy-intensive products. That's what we're going to do in this area, and we're going to build large volumes of the world's most cost-effective and the world's most environmentally effective batteries. We do that in a partnership-based way. We collaborate with everyone. We don't intend to develop our own technology, and we actually do see a very deep interest from global stakeholders and Norwegian stakeholders to team up with us. We were very happy to announce a couple of weeks ago that we've teamed up with Scatec Solar, mentioned several times today, as a purchaser of our batteries. So we're now getting together with Scatec to develop next generation, low cost, environmentally friendly solutions to basically unlock more solar deployment globally. So my main message to this conference today is that Norway can and will produce the most environmentally friendly battery cells. They complement and augment the opportunity for the solar industry. This is a sunrise industry. It's about taking hydropower, putting that hydropower into sustainable products, using those products to unlock more solar development, which also can come from Norway. So it's an extremely exciting decade we have in front of us, and I'm very grateful to be able to tell my perspectives on that to this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tom Einar. I'm afraid we will not spend much time in questioning you a lot about FREYR directly because of the time which is running out on us. But I have a couple of questions to you all together. I mean, what you have been mentioning is, in addition to the clean, green hydropower, which is the base of the industrialization of Norway altogether, and of course, which is also the base of the Norwegian solar industry, and highly important. You've also mentioned digitalization, automation, which of course has a base in the fact that we have a manpower base in Norway, which is innovative and creative and is able to digest whatever education they've received through what I call the Norwegian model. So that's very good. And in addition, you mentioned trust, which of course internationally might have more power than what we do understand from a Norwegian perspective. So I think altogether you mentioned it all: electricity, cheap, green, cooling as well, water of course, manpower, R&D, and you also said good support from the government, which to my ears sounded a bit new, but anyway, and you also mentioned automation and finance. Now, it seems like it all comes together and it's just to leverage on this, and of course some of you do that already. But tell me, where are the challenges? Which challenges do you see, not only for yourself, but for the Norwegian industry as such, the solar industry, i.e. the energy industry linked to solar, as batteries of course is as well. Maybe we could start with you, Carsten, and get your view on where the challenge is. The major challenge, I might say, for you.
Yeah, Yeah, there are a number of challenges, and one which we have mentioned already is the high labor cost, and that is compared to Asian production. That's one element that can be addressed through automation and digitalization. So that's therefore that is a very important part of the story going forward. Another element is value chains and partners. Currently, if you look at production of PV components, 80%, in some cases 90% are produced in Asia and in particular in China. And so equipment, consumables, customers, partners are largely based in China and Asia. So that is one of the challenges that we need to address and turn around. While there's a lot of expertise and innovation in Europe, that industry has burned their fingers in 2010, 2012 timeframe, and there is not much manufacturing left. But that needs to change. As we've heard, PV is going to be the most important energy source, and so this will be also strategic importance for Europe, and so therefore this needs to be encouraged, and it needs to grow. And that is happening, of course, partly through market pull, but also through policy frameworks that should come in place. For example, the French system with encouraging low carbon footprint, which does encourage production in countries like Norway and other places in Europe versus coal-heavy countries like China. That's some of the elements, and that's of course also that's why we are engaged in for example, the European Solar Manufacturing Council, which is promoting manufacturing in Europe. Financing is certainly another element of that, although there is some attractive R&D support, for example, in Norway. Financing in China is a lot cheaper and more readily available. So there are disparities there, and there is scope to improve the situation. The European Investment Bank, for example, could be a lot more attractive. GIEC was mentioned. That is partly not attractive enough to actually make the most out of it.
Okay, thanks. That's highly interesting, and you touched on a couple of topics which we might get back to a bit later. But to the rest of you, Øyvind, maybe you have a quick comment.
Let's say a purchaser of modules that are built with wafers or battery solutions for our projects or services such as Predictors. Then for our projects, for us obviously quality and CO2 footprint are key metrics. But when we are building a solar power plant, I mean obviously the pricing is of key importance. So we are. When we are looking at 500 watt peak panel, then obviously we are looking is the price 20 cents or 22 cents. That might be all the difference for whether or not it's a viable commercial case. So whether or not the power plant will be built at all. So obviously the pricing is key, and from China, as you mentioned, Carsten. You have excellent financing solutions through Sinosure and other mechanisms, and I think we have some things to learn there in Norway, and to improve a bit on the financial mechanisms we have, and ultimately as well on the technology side, there is a lot of excellent technologies being developed in Norway that are very, very interesting, and for us it's important to, let's say, take those to the next stage, so it's also bankable and not at the R&D stage, which is very important once we involve the international financing institutions in the project as well. So there is a lot of interesting things coming out of Norway now, and I'm very eager to see how we can leverage that moving forward.
Espen, you have a comment?
Sure. So I believe a lot of the challenges in general is the total change in terms of, I would say, asset operations and mixture, etc., that needs to come to place. But all of the current actors have these ambitions, but they need to adopt new technologies. They need to find new suppliers. They need to figure out how to go about optimizing both projects and portfolios. But I believe, luckily for this sector here in Norway, you could just look over to the oil and gas. You've seen an ecosystem there very well functioning around the same challenges, I would say. And I guess a lot of this ecosystem is now also looking to move into this renewable segment.
Sorry to break you off there very briefly. What's your major challenge?
So our major challenge is actually to be able to move enough of our current technology from the into well-functioning and operating systems for our clients in the renewable sector. So we're investing still in R&D and development on our side, because we have very good methods and tools, but in order to make this super efficient for the renewable companies, we need to set this up as a software as a service, so we can adopt new assets. I would say like 10 assets a day, that's the target, right? Whereas we now go like some months in order to install the setup with a new asset, this needs to be much more efficient. So that's what we're investing heavily in now, in transitioning this, and then we rely on the technologies we made for oil and gas, like standardizing information structure, etc. This is essential in order to make this possible.
Good. So you're bringing your current knowledge from the oil and gas sector into the renewable sector and solar and specifically.
Exactly. So that all the startups in solar, they haven't seen the challenge with owning a large asset portfolio yet, because they're starting up. But the oil and gas companies have a lot of experience in this and develop methods and tools and such concepts that we know develop there, and then we're bringing this into the renewable sectors.
Tom Einar, if you should point to one challenge that you have specifically, which would it be?
This is a great question. I think our collective challenge, right, and is, are we able to capture the opportunity? Are we able to collaborate between ourselves to capture the opportunity, which for both solar developers in Norway and for battery producers in Norway, the opportunity is outside Norway. Yeah, of course, we are going to sell our batteries to certain customers in Norway, but at the end of the day, if we want to go to scale, which we have to do to be competitive in this business, we need to capture markets abroad. And we need to capture markets with clients who want to go with us to do that. So that's why we need to team up with the likes of Scatec. We'd love to team up with the other stakeholders on this call, of course, in any way possible. So I think the biggest challenge we have, the big collective we, the Norwegian renewable industry, is to team up to capture global market share and to accelerate the decarbonization. We can do it. We have the capital to do it. We have the knowledge to do it. There's no reason why Norway shouldn't be a leader in this space. We have the largest balance sheet on the planet, presumably, and we need to put it to work. It's come from one sort of energy, which is yesterday's energy, and then we need to deploy it into tomorrow's energy. And we need to do it together, and we need to collaborate, and we need to take what Norway has to offer of engineering ingenuity and deploy it in the world, because people trust us for some reason. And we'll succeed. I think that's kind of my message is the biggest challenge is how do we collaborate as a joint, in a way, nation, bringing different parts to the table to capture market shares globally.
That's an excellent wrap-up, Tom Einar. If I had had more time, I would have asked you the question, how can we mitigate these challenges and how can we leverage on what we have? But you put it quite right. And in addition to everything we have, the main challenge, as was also alluded to by our friend at NorSun, was that we need to get closer to the customer. And what you are telling us as well is that the actual marketing step, the actual sales, the actual collaboration in terms of making the whole industry stronger outside Norway is a feature for all of you, which could be strengthened both on the manpower side, potentially on the knowledge side, but also on the collaboration side, as far as I understand you well, Tom Einar. And it is a huge opportunity, and you are quite right. Are we able to utilize this opportunity and to enable us to do that? In my view as well, I think it's important to collaborate more closely to make discussion forums and dialogue between various companies in the industry like yourselves, but also to close in on the government in terms of how could R&D support this and how can the finance community support it, including public as well as private funders for the industry. Now, what we do in Norwegian Energy Partner is part of that. I think Innovation Norway had some research a couple of years ago amongst international leaders, how they viewed Norwegians in terms of their export facilitation or in terms of how they sold their products internationally. And I think what we lacked was actually the marketing force, the strength of sales, which we can see sometimes from the US guys or everywhere else. And if we can combine that with financing in the Chinese way, which might be a challenge, but at least if we can combine that with better funding or risk mitigation measures from the Norwegian institutions, but also from the private institutions, and with manpower which are able to sell the Norwegian features and leverage on the Norwegian special features in the solar market. That might help all of us. I won't ask you if you agree, because there is not enough time for that, which is lucky for me, because then I get the last word. But we have 2 seconds left, so if each and one of you would just give us one line in terms of how you would take your company further in this collaborative sense, then that would be good as an end to this session. We'll start with you, Carsten, very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's important that we get together. The solar energy cluster is one way of doing that, and we need to raise the awareness amongst politicians and policymakers that this is a shift that's happening quick, and we need to take the opportunity to make really the best out of it.
Øyvind, what's your take on that?
I think I fully agree with both your words and those of Tom and Carsten here, and I would take it one step further and say that one of the issues we have a lot of excellent technologies. The markets are out there. They're not the oil and gas operator up the street anymore. So to bridge the gap between the technology side of things and what is bankable, so we also can go out and sell it. So to get the politicians involved and also to get the industry together and find a way to bridge the gap between R&D side of technology and what's bankable through demo projects and pilots here in Norway, and then we can launch it out as well.
Very good. Espen, what's your quick comment to what we have been discussing now just at the end?
I believe we are seeing the emergence of a potentially very good and integrated ecosystem here in of various types of actors in this setting, and that's important for us, and also to support this ecosystem in order to be able to see that we can do this from Norway in an accelerated way.
Excellent. Tom Einar, you've alluded to this a lot, but maybe you have just one quick comment at the end.
Well, I think we have to think big and we have to go big. And we have every opportunity to do it, and there is no reason why we shouldn't succeed.
Excellent. With that, I would like to say thank you for viewing this. Thanks to all of our 4 excellent speakers and panel participants, and also to all of you out there who's been willing to listen in to this discussion, and hopefully it brought you some new ideas or some new thoughts around how the Norwegian products might add to your value, or how we could take this industry further collaboratively from a Norwegian standpoint. Thank you so much.
you.